Will Smith is a twat. Will Smith has been hiding the fact of who he really is, and it was exposed that night. And he's really an asshole.
Will Smith's slap of Chris Rock at the 2022 Academy Awards was more than a headline. It was the first spark in a slow, unrelenting collapse of a carefully curated public identity. At the time, many wrote it off as a shocking but isolated moment, an emotional reaction to a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith's alopecia. Yet psychologically, the impact was far deeper. Millions had built an image of Smith as the charming, affable hero of Hollywood, a man whose charisma could transcend controversy. That single strike fractured the narrative, leaving audiences to wonder, who is the real Will Smith? The immediate fallout was intense. Hollywood insiders whispered, critics debated, and the world paused to watch what came next. By 2024, there was a fleeting sense of recovery. Bad Boys, Ride or Die performed well at the box office, proving that audiences were still willing to pay for familiarity, to sit in dark theaters and be reminded of the star they once adored. But a franchise sequel is not redemption. It's a mirror reflecting what was once bigger than life, a reminder of a career that now felt fragile. Then, in 2025, Smith attempted a more ambitious pivot. After 20 years away from music, he released Based on a True Story and launched a global tour. This should have been the moment to remind the world of his versatility, but instead, the machinery of modern attention turned the effort into another battlefield. The promotional footage from his European shows, intended to showcase the energy and enthusiasm of crowds chanting his name, immediately drew skepticism. Faces seemed melted, limbs distorted, movements unervingly synchronized. AI. Heavy post-processing. The debate didn't matter. Data from digital forensics, including analysis by Emmanuel Celiba of Get Real Security, suggested that some clips were authentic yet AI-enhanced or upscaled, creating uncanny distortions. Other experts likened the effect to cheating on crowd size, a manipulative proxy for popularity. The public doesn't pause for nuance. Perception is reality. On Reddit, Twitter, and TikTok, every warped frame was dissected, every extra finger and unnatural gesture magnified. The clip went viral, not for musical talent or stage presence, but for what looked like desperation. Smith tried to pivot with humor. A playful follow-up video swapped crowd faces with cats, a self-aware nod to the controversy. Some praised the ingenuity, others read it as an admission. He was leaning into artificiality rather than confronting the real problem: trust lost. By November, when he suggested lingering backlash and poor chart performance were symptoms of systemic racism rather than public judgment, he ignited another wave of debate. Critics called it deflection. Supporters framed it as truth. Either way, the result was a fractured public perception. The man who once sold out theaters and commanded $20 million per film was now associated with algorithms, illusions, and a single public misstep that refused to fade. Psychologically, this story resonates because it taps into a fundamental human expectation. We invest in authenticity. When authenticity appears manufactured, whether through AI, PR, or selective disclosure, audiences feel betrayal. The slap didn't destroy Will Smith. Perception did. And every calculated move since then, from music to AI-enhanced tour footage, has only widened the fissure. The attempted comeback became a cautionary tale. In an era of relentless digital scrutiny, every gesture, every visual cue, every misstep is magnified. And for Smith, the road to redemption is no longer about talent or charm. It's about convincing the world that the man they see is the man who exists. That's the war he's fighting now, against perception itself. And the outcome remains uncertain.
No, but I was in a sticky situation because I was actually, an elected official of the union at the time.
Oh.
Will Smith is a twat.
Rob Schneider's interview crystallized what many in Hollywood were whispering. The slap didn't just shock, it exposed. Will Smith has been hiding who he really is, Schneider said bluntly. That night revealed he's really an asshole. This framing became a recurring theme. The idea that beneath the charm, the heroism, the box office victories, there lurked a man capable of explosive violence. Critics and insiders alike began to question if the Smith the world adored had ever existed, or if it was a carefully constructed performance, shattered in a single cinematic moment. Psychologically, the public reacts to this betrayal of image more intensely than to the act itself. The collision of expectation and reality is what fuels outrage.
Will Smith has been hiding the fact of who he really is, and it was exposed that night. He's really an asshole.
Hollywood's collective verdict was encapsulated in one line. For many, Will Smith had become irredeemable. The slap wasn't an isolated incident. It became shorthand for a deeper distrust, a symbol that someone once framed as larger than life could be fallible, volatile, and human in ways the industry and the audience were unprepared to reconcile. This resonates because at a human level, we project ideals onto figures we admire, and the shattering of that ideal feels like a personal betrayal.
Will Smith is like, for me, when I met him, right, I always say...
Like the nicest,
yes,
most wonderful, he's a liar. Complete, utter fraud.
Schneider, close to Chris Rock, described the painstaking attempt to reach him after the incident, highlighting not only concern for a friend but the deep moral fracture the slap created. The respect for Rock, and simultaneous contempt for what Smith did, ran like a current through every Hollywood conversation. The incident was no longer just an event. It was a lens through which the man himself was being examined, dissected, and judged.
Will is a douchebag, and that's something that you can't... The thing is, that's how politically correct the Academy is.
Right.
That they were so cowardly.
March 27, 2022, wasn't just another Academy Awards. It was the night Will Smith's carefully cultivated image collided violently with reality, and the consequences rippled far beyond a single slap. When he struck Chris Rock on live television, it was instantly shocking, but what made it seismic wasn't just the act itself. It was what it revealed about identity, control, and perception in the attention economy. Psychologically, the public reacts more intensely to a rupture of expectation than to the action itself. Will Smith had been framed for decades as affable, charismatic, even heroic. The slap exposed an emotional volatility that contradicted everything audiences believed, and that contradiction would define his career in the years that followed. The immediate fallout was swift and relentless. Rob Schneider, speaking for many insiders, said bluntly that Smith's real self had been exposed, that the veneer of Hollywood charm was now cracked, revealing a man whose actions could not be reconciled with the persona he had built. For Schneider and others close to Chris Rock, the concern wasn't celebrity gossip. It was moral. A man known for empathy and warmth had inflicted public violence on a peer, and the respect owed to the victim became the prism through which the world judged Smith. Public response was quantifiable and damning. A YouGov poll taken days after the incident found 61% of Americans deemed Smith's actions unacceptable. Among older respondents, the condemnation was sharper, with 72% labeling it wrong. Favorability ratings plummeted from 80% pre-incident to near 50%, a near halving of trust and admiration. A follow-up Yahoo News/YouGov poll showed unfavorable views rising to 47%, with 67% stating unequivocally that Smith had crossed the line. Hollywood's institutions responded decisively. The Academy launched a formal review, Smith resigned, and he received a 10-year ban from attending Oscars events. Netflix canceled Bright, and lucrative offers slowed to a trickle. This wasn't just reputation damage. It was a seismic career contraction, a clear demonstration that in the modern entertainment landscape, perception is enforceable, measurable, and unforgiving. Celebrity voices amplified the narrative, each framing Smith's actions in moral and practical terms. Judd Apatow described the slap as pure rage, a dangerous loss of control with the potential to cause serious physical harm, highlighting that the consequences extended beyond humiliation to potential injury. Rob Reiner argued Smith owed Rock a profound apology, framing the act as a violation of both personal and professional ethics. Kathy Griffin positioned the incident as a warning for comedians everywhere, a precedent of potential physical retaliation for speech. Sophia Bush distilled it simply: violence is never an answer. Jim Carrey, while critical of Hollywood's standing ovation for Smith, noted that Chris Rock could have legally pursued massive damages, upwards of $200 million, given the permanent record of the event online. Even in criticism, there was restraint. No one called for retribution, no one wished harm, and all discourse remained contained within the bounds of moral judgment and legal consequence. Smith himself attempted to navigate the narrative with a public apology on Instagram, acknowledging the destructive power of violence and labeling his behavior unacceptable and inexcusable. Yet, the damage to trust had already widened the fissure in his public persona. Psychologically, the public doesn't forgive the rupture of expected authenticity easily. Apologies can address facts, but not the perceived betrayal. Beyond the slap, the audience contextualized Smith's actions within a pre-existing narrative: the long, highly publicized scrutiny of his marriage. For decades, Will and Jada Pinkett Smith were Hollywood's power couple. Married in 1997, parents to Jaden and Willow, appearing together at premieres, and embodying a rare model of enduring celebrity love. That image was already under strain before the slap, eroded further in 2020 during a live Red Table Talk episode when Jada disclosed an entanglement with singer August Alsina. Will remained seated, visibly emotional but silent, as millions watched this private fracture unfold publicly. What should have been an intimate story of struggle and growth became a punchline, a meme, and a symbolic marker of lost respect. For audiences, the moment crystallized an underlying truth. The idealized Will Smith, the man who seemed perfect, was human, fallible, and deeply flawed. The intersection of personal scandal and public misjudgment amplified every subsequent step in Smith's career. He was no longer measured solely by box office draw, talent, or charisma. He was measured against a single, irreversible act of violence and the perception it generated. What followed in public consciousness wasn't just blame. It was the erosion of credibility. The man who once commanded stages and theaters with effortless magnetism became inseparable from an image of loss of control, desperation, and performative artificiality. As every news outlet, social media thread, and celebrity commentary dissected his choices, a narrative emerged. A cautionary tale of fame, expectation, and the unforgiving mechanics of attention in the digital age. Psychologically, this resonates because audiences invest not just in talent but in perceived authenticity. And when authenticity fractures publicly, the consequences are enduring. In this context, the slap and its fallout become less a single moment than a lens for everything that came after. The AI-enhanced crowd footage, the mixed reception of a music comeback, the public deflections, and the ongoing debate about race, media, and celebrity accountability. Every move, every video clip, every public statement is now evaluated not merely on content but through the prism of trust lost. This is what makes the story extraordinary. It's not about whether Smith is talented or likable. It's about whether the man audiences believe they knew can be reconciled with a man who acted in front of the world. That is the war he fights. Not against critics, not against Hollywood, but against perception itself. And in the attention economy, perception is power, permanence, and punishment all at once. March 27, 2022, was meant to be a crowning moment for Will Smith, but the slap of Chris Rock turned it into a global spectacle of fallout and scrutiny. At first glance, it was a shocking act of rage, but what made it seismic was how it shattered the carefully constructed image of Smith as Hollywood's affable, heroic star. Psychologically, the public reacts not just to actions, but to ruptures in expectation. And the contrast between the man they admired and the man on stage created an irresistible wave of outrage. Polls were immediate and damning. 61% of Americans called the act unacceptable, with 72% of those over 65 condemning it. Favorability ratings plummeted from 80% to near 50%, and institutional consequences followed. Resignation from the Academy, a 10-year Oscars ban, Netflix canceling Bright, and lucrative offers slowing to a trickle. Hollywood Voices framed the moment with moral clarity. Judd Apatow highlighted the uncontrolled rage and potential harm. Rob Reiner demanded apologies. Kathy Griffin warned of dangerous precedents for comedians, and Jim Carrey criticized the standing ovation. Yet even in criticism, no one called for retaliation. The discourse stayed within moral and legal bounds. Smith's Instagram apology acknowledged the destructive power of violence, but it couldn't repair the fracture in public trust. Layered atop this was the scrutiny of his marriage. The 2020 Red Table Talk revelation of Jada's entanglement, while Will sat across, emotional and silent, became a meme and a symbolic marker of lost respect. Audiences now saw a man once idealized as fallible, human, and deeply flawed. The combination of public scandal, personal scrutiny, and digital amplification meant that Smith was no longer measured solely by talent or charm. Every subsequent move, AI-enhanced crowd footage, album releases, public statements, was filtered through the lens of trust lost. The slap became less a single act than a prism through which the world evaluated every choice he made. Psychologically, this lands because audiences invest in authenticity, and when authenticity breaks, the consequences are enduring. What follows for Smith isn't just a career challenge. It's a fight to convince the world that the man they saw is the man who truly exists. In the attention economy, perception is power, permanence, and punishment all at once, and that is the war Will Smith still fights today.
Because if I would have done that, they would have been hauled out to prison because, like, they were so worried about being, racist or whatever.